I firstly want to preface that this video is going to be quite long. I had to write a script to help me get my point across and keep it purely factual with my opinions minimally used. The reasoning for that is because I'm not just going to be talking about the whole BAFTAs situation, but also mention things about my own experiences as someone who has Tourette's. This video isn't going to disagree that what was said at the BAFTAs was hurtful or damaging, or that the feelings people have around the word that was used is valid. I will not be putting them down, or devaluing that, or the effects the N-word has on people. This video is purely to clear up the inaccuracies and misinformation around Tourette's, and to also show it from my point of view as someone who has had an extensive history with it. I will also be talking about who really should be blamed for this incident and how it was handled. To begin with, I'm going to tell you a bit about me. My name is Dom, or Diamond Dom 15 as many of you know. I'm a 19-year-old from the UK and create a variety of content ranging from horror game playthroughs to multiplayer games or to videos like this. I was diagnosed with Tourette's when I was around the age of 13, which means I have been diagnosed for around 6 years now. However, I had shown some symptoms since I was around the age of 5 or 6. This realization was only made after my diagnosis when my tic started presenting itself in other forms such as words and phrases, and motor actions too, such as my head jerking or squinching up my face. My first tics I recall is saying words like biscuit and kitten in a high-pitched voice. My case of Tourette's thankfully is not as extreme as it used to be. However, every day for 3 years during high school, I used to wake up beating my closed fist against my chest and jerking my head to the side. So much so that I often didn't spend much time in classes and rather spent it in my school's SEND department or the medical room. However, despite this, I sat my GCSEs and passed, albeit in a separate room, and had an emergency scrub for my maths exams because I couldn't use the word processor effectively. It's quite bad. For my GCSEs, I was having tic attacks and was beating my chest with the hand I used to write, which made writing impossible, and occasionally was doing the verbal tics too. During these tic attacks at school, I'd require a blocker, which at first was bubble wrap, which is quite funny thinking about it now, but definitely did get quite a few odd looks and questions. I was then given a cushion after a year of the nurse searching and saving bubble wrap on the side, just in case I came in, which I always did. The cushion was definitely a lot more effective at stopping me from causing pain or bruising, and it did also stop the looks too. However, my tic attacks often lasted for several hours, with me only finally being allowed to be sent home after lunchtime. They did this in hopes that the tics would stop or at least calm down so that I could continue my work for the rest of the day and go back to the classes. They never did. I want to mention that I have 3 types of Tourette's, some worse than others. Firstly, I have palilalia. However, for the most part, I do not notice this much anymore, but that does not mean I am cured from it or that it is gone. It could come back, or it could have just gotten used to it and therefore don't notice it as much. Palilalia is where you repeat your own words and phrases. For me, I did this in a whisper, kinda like brick. Secondly, I have echolalia, which is where I repeat noises or phrases from other people. Thankfully, that doesn't present itself much compared to coprolalia, but it still is a huge part of my Tourette's in my life today. Finally, I have coprolalia, which is often seen as the funny, ha-ha side of Tourette's. But of course, as the BAFTAs have shown us, that it does have a really negative and damaging side to it as well. For anybody who is not sure what coprolalia is, it's where someone will say offensive, obscene, or inappropriate things without intention. A huge misconception is that everyone with Tourette's swears, when in reality, it's 1 in 10 people with the condition. I have had many moments that have been seen to be funny with the coprolalia, but also extremely embarrassing cases too. A big moment where it was embarrassing for someone other than me was when I used to say that my history teacher kept kids in his cupboard, which of course he did not. I also used to say many more mean things about him, which I never meant. Looking back on it now, I do feel really bad for him because he didn't deserve any of it, but my Tourette's were more aggressive to him. Maybe it was because he was one of my favourite teachers. Who knows? Another really bad case is when I was going on holiday with my brother and his partner and my nephew. During the car ride to the airport, my Tourette's had already said several things that would have been really dangerous to say in the airport, especially around people who didn't notice my sunflower lanyard. One of these things was me saying that my brother had drugs in his bag. Another was saying that I had a bomb in my butt. In fact, I did not have a bomb in my butt, and my brother did not have drugs in his bag. From a content creator side of things, I've also had tics where I have called certain people a bitch, or said that they have had sex with various people, all during my worst years of Tourette's. Which, keep in mind, was before I was 18, making these phrases certainly more worse. I have called people words such as an SLUT. Often these moments have been clipped and viewed many times, and as a friend group we have shrugged these off or laughed about them. Now that I have cleared up my own history with Tourette's, let's talk about what happened at the BAFTAs. John Davidson is a Scottish Tourette's Syndrome campaigner who became widely known after the BAFTA Film Awards this year, where he was present as the real-life inspiration and executive producer of the BAFTA-winning film I Swear, which documents his life and struggles with Tourette's. He had every right to attend and shouldn't be made to feel bad for doing so. However, already all over social media I have seen ableist comments, which I will address later when I discuss misconceptions about Tourette's. It was reported by many of the attendees who were there that John Davidson had been ticking throughout the whole event, saying phrases such as "shut the fuck up" or "fuck you," and of course, the N-word. He even left the ceremony early, stating that he was deeply mortified if anyone perceived his tics as intentional, emphasizing they do not reflect his beliefs. I also can't imagine the embarrassment he would feel in the moment, especially when tics are not always easy to predict. Even I have had my own share of slip-ups. From many of the people I have seen outrage come from, it is clear to me, and many other people who have Tourette's and have already spoken out about the situation, that these people who are being ableist clearly haven't seen the movie, or are educated on Tourette's. For that I agree and believe everyone should go watch it if you can, or read information and research the condition. I'll put some links in the description to some good sources to help you with this. I even used them on my parents too. I have also seen many people feel sorry for either Davidson or sorry for Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, but not many people being sorry for both sides. As we have already established, Davidson's tics are not intentional and do not reflect his beliefs, which is true for everyone who has Tourette's, except for maybe a few bad apples. If you want to be outraged at someone, it should be the BBC for not editing out the outburst before airing the pre-recorded event, or even for the apology later given by Alan Cumming to be more directed than vague to those who were offended. I would now like to talk about a few misconceptions I have seen and heard so many times. The first one being, Tourette's is what you were thinking. This 99% of the time is not the case. A big example of this is it can also be things that you are actively trying not to say. I believe this may be the reason why John Davidson had said the N-word, especially if he knows he has tics in the past that can be racial slurs or slurs in general. 2. Tourette's can be cured. There is no cure for Tourette's. However, there has been some documented methods and techniques where it can make tics more manageable. For instance, being relaxed and not stressed can be really helpful. Attending big events like this can be stressful and can make someone with Tourette's tic more. And they can be ticking worse due to it. Some people can do breathing techniques, however, for me this doesn't work and might not work for many other people too. There is also medication that can be taken to help manage the symptoms, but these are not a cure, and sometimes can have worse side effects than just dealing with the condition through educating those ignorant to it. 3. Tourette's syndrome is caused by poor parenting or emotional issues. This is false. Tourette's is a genetic neurological disorder, not a result of psychological problems or bad parenting. While no single gene causes Tourette's syndrome, hundreds of genes are likely involved, with some rare mutations in the SLITRK1, NRXN1, and CNTN6 to only have a few examples linked to a small number of cases. Inheritance is not straightforward either. Most cases are not due to a single dominant gene, and a person with Tourette's syndrome has about a 50% chance of passing their gene mutations to a child, though not everyone with the genes develops symptoms. 4. Tics are visible and disruptive. This is only partly true. Tic disorders can come in many forms. Some can be motor only, which is the movements. Some can be verbal only, which is the talking. And of course, some can be both, as in with the case of Tourette's Syndrome. 5. People with Tourette's Syndrome should be excluded from participating in things. This is just an outright ableist and is a dehumanizing take. Saying this sort of thing is like saying people in wheelchairs shouldn't be allowed to attend an event because seating arrangements will be different. Or like saying a person who is deaf shouldn't be allowed to take front row seats at a concert because they can't hear the music anyway. See how wrong that sounds? It sounds really bad, doesn't it? Now, I want to talk about the process and what it is like for being diagnosed with Tourette's. Tourette's syndrome is diagnosed when there is both motor and verbal tics involved. This must be recorded over a long time span, usually of 12 months, and mustn't stop for longer than 3 months. This doesn't mean that if you don't tic for 5 months, you don't have a tic disorder. It just means you don't have Tourette's. For me, my diagnosis took longer than 12 months, but that is because of the UK is slow, and so is the NHS. However, once I had gotten my diagnosis and was told more about the condition, it became clearer and showed us more symptoms we had actually not noticed until afterwards. One of these is from the age of 5 or 6, where I had a persistent cough. Every doctor couldn't wrap their head around it, but now with the diagnosis, it was clear to us that it was potentially a tic. With that all said, I hope this video clears things up for you all and can help some people learn something new about Tourette's. If this did, then please consider liking the video and subscribing. This is not my usual content, but I may make follow-ups if people ask for more information, and always feel free to leave a comment and I will try and reply to them all. But yeah, thank you all for watching.